The last time I talked about beat-em-up games, we talked about the relatively popular Dungeon Fighter Online. Well, popular in other countries. It's one of the first games to blend the fast-paced action combat of beat-em-up games with the online persistent world of an MMORPG. For a game that's not really known in the States, it was a bit surprising to learn that it's one of the most profitable games of all time. So of course other games tried to do the same thing, with varying levels of success, with today's game being another example. Towerborne, an early access side-scrolling action beat-em-up game developed by Stoic and published by Xbox Game Studios of all companies. Towerborne is less of an MMORPG and more of a live service co-op beat-em-up, but it functions very similarly to an MMO like Dungeon Fighter Online. Released into early access in September of 2024 and Xbox's game preview program in April of 2025, Towerborne has had some fairly positive reception, but relatively low buzz. Towerborne first entered my radar when I saw a trailer for it during an Xbox game showcase. So when I saw it on Steam randomly, my first thought was, wow, this game released? And that's sort of been something that's dragging this game down. It has little to no advertisement for it, which is surprising considering it's an Xbox Studios title. With it releasing recently on Game Pass, it does seem to have picked up in population, but is it ultimately worth checking out? Let's talk about Towerborne. As I stated earlier in the video, Towerborne is an early access title with an upfront cost of at least $25 on either Steam or through the Xbox Game Preview system, which is basically early access games on Xbox. When the game released on Xbox, it also released with cross-play support, meaning Xbox players can also play with Steam users. It also released with cross-progression, which is such a nice feature considering a lot of online games don't support cross-progression between platforms. There are more expensive founder packs that come with extra cosmetics, monthly bonuses, and cash shop currency, but of course those are completely optional to purchase. If you are looking to jump in potentially for a cheaper cost, the game is also on Xbox Game Pass, so if you don't want to purchase one of the early access founder packs and already have Game Pass, then you can check it out through that subscription. Getting into the story of Towerborne, the game takes place in a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting. You play as an ace, heroes of the world that defeat monsters and any threats to the safe haven of Belfry, which is the game's central hub. As an ace, it's up to you to keep Belfry safe, otherwise humanity will fall to the dark forces on its outskirts. A simple story with a slightly interesting world, but I would be lying if any of the story actually stuck with me during the game's cutscenes and stiff dialogue presentation. Graphically, the game has a very cartoony cel-shaded style that in my opinion looks great. The world and characters are colorful. Character animation and models are full of expression and sort of remind me of Wind Waker's aesthetics, which is a good thing. Sound-wise, the game's sound effects are as you would expect. Monsters have their typical grunts, roars, and moans as you fight them, and weapons have a satisfying clash or thunk when using them. Musically, Towerborne has a very orchestral, adventurous sound to it. Almost every track employs the use of piano, violin, flutes, and drum. The soundtrack invokes emotions of danger, heroism, or innocence in every beat, and I was truly enjoying it. That being said, compared to some of the other tracks I've covered on the channel, I wouldn't say any theme really stuck with me after a play session, but I can definitely appreciate its elegance. Before you can get into any of this though, you start with character creation. Character creation in Towerborne has a good bit of depth in terms of how you can make your character look. You have the choice between male or female, various voices for your avatar, skin, hair, eyes, mouth options, and sliders, and then finally your name. name. The creator actually has quite a lot of options, more than I was expecting, and you can really create some odd-looking characters. Once you are satisfied with your look and pick a name, you are thrown into a tutorial. The tutorial will teach you all you need to know about Towerborne, which includes movement, combat, interactions, and the game's various systems like questing, equipping gear, and character classes. Movement and combat play like your typical 2D beat-em-up. You can move in various directions to engage or avoid your opponents, with other defensive movement options like dodging or jumping also being available. Attacking consists of standard light or heavy attacks that can be strung together to perform very specific combos. Eventually, you also learn a light skill to equip as well as a heavy skill. Depending on your class, you get a specific class ability, and then finally you have an Umbra ability, which is tied to these little pet-like things. Similar to Final Fantasy XIV, classes can be switched to at any point outside of missions, with the 4 class choices being Sentinel, Pyroclast, Rockbreaker, and Shadow Striker. Once the tutorial is completed, you are brought to the game's central hub of Belfry. From here, you can take on missions, upgrade gear, and party up with other players. The various missions you pick up from NPCs in Belfry will primarily be tied to the game's storyline and will help push you along through the game. The other missions provided by the request board function more like a daily quest system, where you will do little bite-sized tasks that reward you with currency. We'll talk more about that currency in a bit. Getting into missions will have you exploring the game's overworld map outside of the central hub. Here you are presented with nodes, represented as small hexagon spaces. Each node has to be unlocked by completing a quick mission to be able to move to the next area. Node missions come in a variety of different mission structures, from the basic kill all enemies to protecting an NPC. As you unlock the map, you'll get rewarded with gear, items, and more importantly, specific nodes that can be played repeatedly. You see, each node you unlock isn't necessarily replayable. Repeatable missions are instead reserved for specific nodes that you must get to as you explore further and further beyond Belfry. The repeatable missions consist of the more difficult engaging content that encourage group play, like the boss encounters. Partying up with other players is also easy to do. From the menu, simply select the group button and either start your own party or join one. Although it doesn't always work, especially if you are trying to join someone on a different platform. At least it had trouble sometimes when I tried it. But when you do get a group going, it can feel like those arcade beat-em-ups, especially on higher difficulties. Towerborne is truly at its best when you got a group of friends, either local or online, fighting alongside you as you explore the world. It gets even better with character progression. Each class can be leveled up to a maximum of 50. As you level up, you'll unlock more perks you can equip for customization and better gear that's dropped from missions that will have completely randomized stats, similar to other looter games like Diablo or Borderlands. The game has a lot of different stats and options for you to play with, allowing you to theory craft different specific builds to express how you want to play. Towerborne is essentially the modern beat-em-up that can compare to a game like Destiny or Diablo. However, I do wish Towerborne had more depth like those games. With Towerborne being in early access, there is a lot of features and content still in development. Pretty much everything I've covered up to this point is what the game currently has to offer. So if you like constantly doing repetitive missions and tasks over and over and unlocking more of the world map, then Towerborne will be a good time for you, especially with friends. But I would be lying if I said that the game doesn't get repetitive very quickly. Until the game adds more variety in content activities, it honestly feels like something you pick up, play for about 30 minutes at a time or so, and then log out. Currently, there is no PvP, no mini-games, no achievements, no alternative forms of progression, no real endgame loop, no guild system, and worst of all, no chat functionality.
You serious?
Yeah, for a live service game, you would think there would be some sort of chat that would allow you to talk to other players, but alas, there isn't one yet. I would almost bet that chat is something that is coming soon enough, but the game sorely needs other activities to experience besides mindlessly playing missions. The bosses are some of the absolute best content to play once you get to higher levels, but I'd personally like to see other features implemented. Maybe things like life skills, crafting, other forms of progression, progression, anything that would help break up the constant mission grind. Currently, the biggest thing to look forward to for players is events and the endgame equipment grind for legendaries, which sort of reminds me of Destiny. I'm sure the developers do plan to add many of the features I've mentioned, but obviously I'm talking about how the game is currently. As it stands, the game feels anemic in terms of content, which honestly makes sense since it is in early access. With the game having an upfront cost of only $25 though, it's not bad for what it is, and the game will be free to play upon full release. Speaking of which, let's talk about the game's monetization. Beyond the $25 upfront cost to buy the game, there is really nothing else that you need to spend money on to enjoy Towerborne, unless you want to purchase cosmetics to further customize your character's looks, emotes, and expressions. The game does have a cash shop that sells cosmetic outfits, Umbra customizations, emotes, and something called Curios. Curios is Towerborne's version of battle passes. This is where that currency we talked about earlier comes in, the currency being called writs. As you earn writs doing your daily missions, you can unlock various cosmetics within different curios that are active. Towerborne has a slightly more player-friendly system with their battle passes, because once you've purchased a curio, you can unlock all of its rewards at your own pace without having to worry about it ever expiring. The curio itself does cost a premium item called a curio core, so ultimately you are paying money to obtain all of its rewards, but at least it's not time gated. However, the developers have confirmed that there will be time limited curios, so there will still be cosmetics that will prey upon FOMO. But honestly, beyond cosmetics, Towerborne has nothing else in its cash shop. No pay to win, no subscription, no convenience items. It's one of the most friendly cash shops I've seen in a while coming from a live service game. Really, my only criticism is that I hope they add cooler looking cosmetics eventually, if they expect players to spend money. Towerborne in general is a pretty decent time if you are a fan of beat 'em ups and looter games. It's got enough of a gameplay loop to keep you coming back for short bursts of fun, but in its current form, there isn't much here that is going to keep players continuously playing. The game just needs a little more time to cook, honestly, but for those who are willing to give the game a chance early on, there is fun to be had here, especially since the developers are keen to drop new events for players to have fun with. Let's wrap things up on Towerborne. If you are a fan of beat-em-up games, Towerborne is right up your alley. It has the makings of RPG-infused beat-em-up games like Castle Crashers, River City Ransom, or Scott Pilgrim, but with a lot more depth in its RPG mechanics. Even though the game is only in early access, the fact that the game is cross-platform, cross-progression, and even supports local couch co-op on Xbox, I gotta say it's quickly becoming my new party game to introduce to my gaming group. But even if you don't have anyone local to play with you, it has a really easy group feature where you can quickly start playing with other players. Let's also mention the game has a low cost to jump into, with it only being $25, or at minimum a subscription to Xbox Game Pass. For a live service game with a cash shop, the game surprisingly has no pay to win, at least right now. The game can be completely played without dropping anything further than its buy-in cost, unless you want to make your character look fancy. Unfortunately for how fun Towerborne can be, it gets repetitive pretty fast until you unlock the more interesting content. For a while, you'll see the same backgrounds, the same enemies, do the same combos, until you get to the higher levels. Luckily, there are events that do help break up this monotony and adds a spin on this repetitive content, but events aren't always going on. The story for Towerborne starts off relatively strong, but boy does it fall off rather quickly. The game has a really cool cutscene in the beginning explaining its world, and then everything after that is all told through bland, flat character dialogue. There are ways to make the storytelling in a game like this more exciting. Have characters express themselves, maybe have cutscenes in engine, or have voice acting. Anything is better than the back and forth text boxes that characters currently have. Like many of the early access games I've covered on the channel, the game just feels incomplete or generally just missing a lot of features. There have been confirmations indications that content is coming, of course, but in its early access build, it's missing basic functionality like chat, guilds, achievements, and more. Finally, Towerborne feels like an arcade game that is meant to be played in small bursts of fun, maybe 30 minutes to an hour with friends, but the game is fundamentally built and modeled to be a live service game, which means it introduces grinds and activities that will try to have you online as long as possible. I question why this game wasn't just made as a normal offline single-player game, with more features to feel like a complete experience. As it stands now, there really just isn't much that can keep someone's attention to play for long sessions. Of course, once the game has more content, that can change, and I truly hope for the developers and the players that are willing to stick it out that it does. Towerborne does have that essence of what makes these retro arcade beat-em-ups that we've been getting in the recent years so fun. But as a live service game, it's going to have to continuously add content and features that can hold people's attention. Towerborne can potentially be that mix of beat-em-up and online RPG that people have been waiting for. It just needs more time to cook in the oven. Anyways, are you playing Towerborne? Comment below and let me know. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to support my content. Follow all my social media links in the description below, and I hope to see you all next time.